to join with each one of you and to share God's word with you. I am sure that lots of us have got lots of uncertainties in front of us. The Lord does not reveal more than a step. He does not give us a clear picture of what the future is going to be. We face uncertainties in our jobs, within our families, our own lives, and in so many areas, we do face uncertainties. And in Joshua chapter 3, we see the people of Israel and Joshua facing a great, great uncertainty here. They're all camped on one side of River Jordan, and Joshua has just about taken on leadership, a young man, knowing that the people that has taken over are not an easygoing people. They would grumble, they would demand, and he knew that he was in a position that demanded his attention, that demanded his complete self. And Joshua at this age had to be encouraged over and over again. And we know that in Joshua chapter 1, God encourages him by saying, by telling him to be of good courage, to be strong and be of good courage, not to be dismayed, because the Lord, his God, is going to be with him. And so we see that they have come and they've camped at the shores of Jordan. Jordan is overflowing its banks. There's a lot of water gushing down this river. And on the other side, there is the land that is promised to the people of Israel, but it's occupied by so many other people. And that is the situation that we see the people of Israel in. I want to look at this whole chapter in the eyes of three different people. One, Joshua. Second is the people of Israel. And third, by God himself. And what are we going to learn from these three sets of people? How can we get God to lead us through our uncertainties in life is what we're going to very, very briefly look at this afternoon. I'm going to first turn your attention. We'll be jumping all over this chapter. But I'd like you to just keep your ears open and try and see the picture as I paint this picture in front of you. Okay? In verse 1, we see that Joshua rose up early. This is a very difficult thing for me because I'm not an early riser. I do it because I need to get to school, but otherwise I'm not one of those early people. But here we see that Joshua rose up early, and it's a good thing for us to rise up early and to ask God's guidance in our life, to commit the day that the Lord has given us, and to ask him for his guidance and his presence to go with us right through that day. And here we see that he rose up early and then he sets to work. He goes and he talks to the people of Israel and gives them the instructions that are needed. And that is such an amazing part, to draw strength from God and to use it right through the day. To start our day with God is an amazing thing. And to know, so you have the assurance that the Lord is going through it with you. He is going to walk with you right through that day. He is going to take you every step of that day. So the first thing we learned from Joshua is to rise up early. And then in verse 5, we see, Joshua said to the people, "Sanctify yourselves, for the Lord will do wonders among you. Here we see Joshua as a man of faith, a man who could see beyond his difficulties. But he also puts down a condition for the people, and he says, sanctify yourselves, get yourselves pure, prepare yourselves, prepare your heart. And that's what we're here for. We are waiting for the Lord to take us to his home. And while we are waiting, we are meant to prepare ourselves, to sanctify ourselves, because we know that every day we want to become more like the Lord Jesus. And he wants us to become more like him, which is a hard thing to ask, but the Lord works on our behalf, and so it gets easier, let me say. But on our part, we need to really give in to God and ask God to work in our lives so that we may become like him every day. And Joshua here, he not only listens to God, but he also passes on and adds his own faith. So here we see that he says, in verse 5, he says, sanctify yourself, because tomorrow the Lord will do wondrous things among you. How many of us can believe that the next day is going to be a wondrous day? Most times we look at difficulties that would come that day, all the problems that might come up that day. But how many times do we say the Lord is going to do wondrous things? Now, we are children of the Lord, and I think we should expect God to do wondrous and miraculous things in our life. And this aspect of Joshua, knowing things even before, or praising God even before God has done anything, is amazing, because we see that again in verse 9. He says in verse 10, and Joshua said, by this you will know that the living God is among you, and that he will without fail drive out from before you all the other nations that are living there. So the Lord had only prepared for him to cross the river Jordan, and that's where we would think that the miracle would be. But no, Joshua's thoughts were beyond that. He knew that there were enemies there, but you know what? He wasn't scared of them. He wasn't afraid. But he said, the Lord is going to do this. He is going to drive them out. He is going to free up that land for us. He is going to work on our behalf. He is going to walk in our stead. So here we see that Joshua sees beyond, and he has complete faith in the living God. And also we see that in verse 7, he says, this day I will begin to exalt you in the sight of Israel, that they may know that as I was with Moses, so I will be with you. It's amazing that Joshua is being blessed by the Lord again here. He's saying, you're going to see amazing things. And I'm going to be with you like I was with Moses. But you know what? Joshua did not go and say, hey, the Lord told me that he's going to be with me even like he was with Moses. So you better listen to me and you better follow me. No, that wasn't his tone. If you read the way he spoke to the people, he only asked them to sanctify themselves, to get prepared, and then he gives them the instructions as to how to cross the river and to go on. And along with that, he also gives them a seed of faith that he plants in them, and he says that God is going to do those wondrous things on the other side. Isn't it amazing? I was just thrilled to think that this man had so much to boast about, because God was talking to him and telling him that he was with him. But when he spoke to the people, he only encouraged them. He gave them all that was needed for them to cross River Jordan, to face their uncertainties and to move on. What a blessed person this person is, and how much he talks to us about what we need to be, to trust God through all our uncertainties in the future. Next, we move on to the people of Israel. Now, the people of Israel had to follow certain rules. That God is a God of orders, and He gives His orders in such a way. They had to walk at a great distance from the ark. They were not allowed to come near the ark. And that was punishable. I'm sure it was punishable if they did. So they had to be very keen listeners to the words of Joshua. And they had to follow it in extreme detail. They had to listen to every instruction. Now, how are we with our listening? Do we listen to God when He talks to us? Do we look out for little details, or do we fill in those details with our own desires and our own wants? Many a times we do that and we think we are helping God to do it. No, here they had to wait, and they had to get every instruction from God, and they had to follow it. And even before they listened to the instructions, in verse 2, we see that they waited for 3 days. And 3 days, they didn't know how they were going to cross the river, how they were going to go on to the promised land. Everything was a doubt, and everything was a question mark. But you know what the people of Israel did? They continued to do what they were doing. They continued to carry on with whatever responsibilities God had given each one of them. And the 3 days they just waited, and we just listened to a message last week about waiting and how important and how difficult it is to wait. And the people of Israel had waited, they had listened to instructions, they were working on themselves, they were sanctifying themselves, and they were all getting to the point of seeing this great miracle happening before them. How much do we prepare ourselves so God can work a miracle in us? Do we listen to Him? Do we take the time to wait on Him? Do we work on our personal life every day? Those are the grounds that God can use so that He can work a miracle in your life and in my life. And the Lord's hands are never short. He wants to do wonderful things in your life and my life. Our life is meant to be a wonderful life, although it is short. Although it is short, it's meant to be wonderful and beautiful. But remember, we need to put in our part too. We need to put in our part of doing it. And there's one more thing with the people and a part of those people were the priests. The priests who were carrying the presence of the Lord, the Ark of the Covenant, a promise to the children of Israel that the presence of the divine, almighty, eternal God was with them. So when we have given our heart to the Lord, His presence dwells with us. Let us never take our eyes off that the Lord eternal is with us every day. These priests, when they had to wait for this miracle to happen, they had to put in a little bit of action. The others were just waiting on the shore, but the people to take the first step were the priests. The priests had to get to the river, and they had to put their feet in the water. And that is a step of faith. Remember, it's a river that is flowing at its fullest. And the priests had to carry the Ark of the Covenant and go and place their feet in the water. Only then the miracle will happen. And that's how important faith is to each one of us. We need to trust and believe that our God is a God of miracles, that our God will stand for us, that He will fight for us. He will do the impossible things in our life. That we have a God who's much more powerful than we think. that his strength is amazing, his wisdom is beyond comprehension, beyond even our thinking. And that is a God that we have. And the priests had to go and put their feet in water. I just want to read you a little bit that was written by Warren Wiersbe. It says the priests had to get their feet wet before the nation could cross over. And that took faith. Your faith can encourage others in their walk with God. It takes great faith to walk through the water, but it takes even greater faith to walk on the water. And so here we see that the priests had to first do the actions. Remember, when you take your step of faith, you are a testimony for the others. You encourage others. You build other people's faith when you take that first step of faith. How is our faith? Do we really trust on the Lord for everything? Are we waiting on Him for a miracle? Are we willing to first take that step of obedience to go in and let the nation see your faith? Let's just look at ourselves. Are you still lingering on the bank or in the boat? Are we lingering on the side? Are you stepping out in faith? Just ask yourselves, are we people whose faith is going to be a challenge to the others and encouragement to the others? And lastly, we see God in all this. In verse 17, we see that his work is complete. Now, even before this, when you look at the whole chapter, we see that God is a God of order. He had given the children of Israel exact instructions as to how far away they need to be in the ark, how they had to get their tribes together, how they needed to choose a leader among their tribes. They were given all the instructions by God. So God is a God of detail. When you and I plan things for our own life, there are details that will be left out, that can be easily left out. But when we allow the Lord to do the planning for our lives, He does not leave out any detail. He works in ways that we may not understand, but surely He's working out details for your life and my life. And that's such an encouraging thought to me, that me, a mere creature, is taken care of by a living God, an almighty God who's interested in my life, in my everyday life, in how He's going to plan my life till the day I die. And that's such an encouragement. And He just doesn't leave me at the day of my death, but He takes me on from there too. So we see that God's instructions were very clear. And He gives us His instructions only when we are ready to listen to them. Because if we don't listen to them, we do not get the details. Then we go ahead and plan our own lives for ourselves. And this also causes us to completely depend on Him. When we completely depend on Him, He does everything for us. And that's so, so lovely. When you have a God who does everything for us and whom we can completely rely on and we can depend on. And verse 17 says that the priests who bore the ark of the covenant of the Lord stood firm on dry ground in the midst of Jordan, and all Israel crossed over on dry ground until all the people had crossed completely over the Jordan. God's work is complete. It's clear. It's planned. It doesn't say that the children of Israel walked through the puddles of water. that there was still water that was on the ground. It doesn't tell that there was still fish that was stinking and lying there on the ground. No. He says the children of Israel walked on dry ground. A minute ago there was water there, but now there's nothing. And that's God's miracle. It's complete, it's clear, and it's beautiful. And God held the water until all the people had crossed over completely over the Jordan. So God's job is a complete job. He doesn't do anything haphazardly or a bit here and a bit there. No, the Lord, when he wants to work in us, he would take complete charge of us. And so in closing, I just want to encourage you to be like Joshua in the way that he listened to God and passed on what needed to be passed on, and not be boastful about his position or anything else. And listen to details like the people of Israel, and be ready to put in the work so that God can do the miracle. And thirdly, looking at God, trust that he's going to do a complete job in your life. He's going to look at every nitty-gritty in your life, and he is going to do it all for you. And I'd like to finish with this sentence which says, the future is your friend when you follow the Lord and trust his promises. Your uncertainty of the future, of anything, will fly away. And in fact, that which is an uncertainty will become your friend when you follow the Lord and trust his promises. I would like to read that sentence once more before I finish. The future is your friend when you follow the Lord and trust his promises. May the Lord add his richest blessing to what we have just listened, and encourage us to look out for miracles over our uncertainties. And may our dependence on the Lord grow each day. May the Lord's name be glorified. Thank you.